Now, this Sunday is the second Sunday we're reading the basic teachings of Jesus from the Gospel of Luke. St. Matthew's Gospel summarizes what Jesus taught in the Sermon on the Mount. In Luke, it's found in the 6th chapter of his Gospel, Jesus' Sermon on the Plain. So for 3 Sundays, we're reading Luke's summary of Jesus' teaching. Now, what's that teaching? Those who are fortunate should share with those who are not fortunate, Jesus says. We're made in the image of God, so we're called to act as God does. God's love reaches out to all, and that's the way we should love. A love like God's goes beyond love of self. It reaches out to others, particularly those who are less fortunate than ourselves. In today's reading, Jesus calls us to love our enemies. Now, how can you love the enemies that Jesus describes? They hate you, they curse you, they mistreat you, they steal from you, they physically harm you. How can you love someone like that? Perhaps we could look at the first reading this Sunday from the book of Samuel for a suggestion. The reading's about 2 men who don't get along, David and his enemy Saul. Saul hates David. He's extremely jealous of him. And his hatred becomes so intense that he hunts him down in the desert with 3,000 soldiers to kill him. But by stealth, David and a few of his men get into Saul's camp by night, and they get near Saul, who's sleeping among his bodyguards. His spear is right next to him. And one of David's men whispers, "Let me take that spear and thrust it into him." No, don't harm him. Don't harm the Lord's anointed, David says. David sees Saul as more than an enemy. He's God's anointed. David was given life as just Saul was. He was given life by God. And Saul is made in God's image. He's in God's hands to judge, not ours, David says. So that story may help us to understand a little what loving our enemies means. It doesn't mean liking our enemies. I doubt David and Saul would ever like each other, at least in this life. Loving our enemies doesn't mean we have to like them or let them harm us or not resist their injustice. David took Saul's spear. The book of Samuel says, going outside the camp, he shouts out from a distance, "Here's the king's spear. Come and get it. I could have killed him, but I would not harm the Lord's anointed." By that action, David got the better of Saul, didn't he? He doesn't become Saul's victim, nor will he take Saul's life. David respects his enemy as the Lord's anointed. Only God can judge and condemn him. He can't take Saul's life. Only God can do that. He doesn't know what God will do, how God's grace may change him, how God's mercy may anoint him. Saul's God's anointed. Every human being is God's anointed. Love your enemies. That's a teaching of Jesus that's not well received in our life today, is it? It's a teaching we reject, first of all, by not respecting life. How many people are killed in our world today in wars because they're supposed to be our enemies? Or they're collateral damage. They're the Lord's anointed, but they happen to be there when we're trying to kill our enemies. War is a lack of respect for life. And what about the unborn life that's taken away because it goes against what we choose should live? What about immigrants, whom we turn into enemies because they're trying to live in a better place for themselves and for their children? What about people who are different from us, whom we turn into enemies because they're different? It's a hard thing to love your enemy. But if we don't love our enemies, our world won't survive. We won't survive if we don't.